we found that we were able to transfer funds to, as I mentioned, almost 4 million households through our scheme, as compared to about 400,000 in previous government schemes, using exactly the same amount of money. So it's an example of our effort and commitment towards addressing issues of income, not least issues related to income inequality. We ruffled many feathers because in implementing this particular scheme, we cut out so many middlemen. But we succeeded, and we're committed to retaining this as a mainstream policy. Other than that, another good example of our commitment towards addressing this issue has been our commitment towards addressing the issue of household debt. And of course, we identified that the biggest single source of grief to low-income households is that inability and lack of access to the formal financial sector. The Bank of Thailand estimates that about 15% of Thais do not have access to deposit accounts. But if you were to look at an ability to apply for loans from the formal financial sector, that number probably at least doubles. So what we find is that a number of low-income Thais need to resort to informal borrowing through loan sharks, and unbelievably they're paying interest rates minimum of about 3% a month, more common about 10%, and as high as about 20% a month. It's basic financial slavery, and that's something that the government wanted to address. So we launched this program towards the end of last year, where we invited those who were debtors of loan sharks to register with the government in order to enter into a refinancing scheme with government-owned banks, mainly the Government Savings Bank and the Bank of Agriculture. Over 1 million people registered from across the country, every province, and eventually about 150,000 to 200,000 dropped out. Largely, I explained this by saying whenever there's a queue, people walking by, they don't need to know what's at the end of the queue, but they thought they'd join up anyway so that they don't miss out. And in this case, by the time they get to the head of the queue, they realize it's not a government handout as such, and they say no thanks, and they leave the scheme. So we were left with about 800,000 people that we needed to take care of. And so far, we've managed to refinance just over half of that, which is a significant achievement. It has made an enormous impact on the lives of over 400,000 individuals. I estimate that the interest transfer, i.e. the savings in debt repayment and interest payment for these 400,000 people total about 4 billion baht a month. So that's 4 billion in the pockets of the poorest of the poor, as opposed to in the pockets of the loan shark lenders. And it's something we want to follow up on. In the middle of this month, we'll be organizing a credit line for those who have been refinanced, so that in future, when they are in need of funds, they don't need to go back to loan shark lenders and can continue to stay within the formal banking sector. That also prompted us to accelerate our plans towards providing genuine microfinancing options to the poor, and we'll be doing that largely by using the government-owned banks as the provider of funds. It's all very difficult work. The negotiations often had to take place at the extreme micro level, i.e. case by case. We had to use all kinds of means of bringing the lenders, who were all, of course, involved in an illegal activity, to the negotiating table. And we will continue to work on this scheme until we can take care of the rest of the borrowers. So these are some schemes that I think is indicative of the priorities that the government has set at the micro level. From a legislation perspective, we are also accelerating our plan to set up a national savings fund. Basically, out of about 35 million Thais in the workforce, only about 10 to 12 million have a pension scheme. The other 25 million or so have nothing, no safety net whatsoever. And so the government wants to pass this law which will allow a co-investing scheme whereby the government can match the savings of individuals up to 100 baht a month, so that on retirement they can have access to a pension. That's something we are hoping to be able to table in Parliament in this current session, i.e. within this year, and hopefully it won't be too controversial a piece of legislation, and we'll be in a position to start up this fund within next year. The other piece of legislation, which is designed to create greater transparency and fairness in the system, of course, is the very controversial property tax law, which several governments have talked about, and this government is committing to. At the Ministry of Finance, there's a kind of a dark joke that that reflects actual events, as to whenever a finance minister tries to, push this particular piece of legislation, it always signals the fall of the government. Well, so far the cabinet has approved it. Nothing, we came close to collapsing, but not because of this particular piece of legislation. And we are hoping again that we should be able to table this to Parliament. Probably not in this session because it's more complicated, but we'll be able to do so hopefully during our remaining term. So our efforts to try to create a more level playing field for all Thais, at least from an economic perspective, is something that we are proud of and we remain committed to. But beyond that, looking at strategically how Thailand needs to position itself is the issue of competitiveness. And here I'm talking now at the macro level. And I think the biggest opportunity for Thailand lies in the fact that we are strategically positioned within what everybody knows will be the fastest growing region in the world, and that is Asia. And the most important theme, in my opinion, within that is the acceleration of urbanization within Asia. And of course, I mean by that China principally, but the same thing is happening also in India, in Thailand also, but also in other Asian countries. And urbanization, because of industrialization, leads to urbanization needs. And these needs are, some of these key needs can be provided almost uniquely by Thailand. Two areas particular that I like to highlight. One is the tourism sector, not least because with urbanization comes greater income, comes the need to travel, and there I think we are in a good position to capture the main bulk of that. I believe as lucrative as our tourism sector is today, with around 15 million visitors a year, we should really be thinking along the lines of what France and Spain is able to achieve in its role of a provider of tourism to the Eurozone, of attracting 40, 50, 60 million people a year. And therefore the upside for us in that particular sector is enormous. There is, I think, a need to significantly shift our approach to tourism sector. I think we need to be much more open-minded about going into partnership with our customers, meaning we need to allow co-investment in our tourism sector by countries whereby we expect our customers to come from. For example, if we want to seek to broaden our marketplace in South Korea, we probably need to go and talk to Sheila and other provider of travel services to Koreans in terms of what we can do for them, and what kind of investments they should make in Thailand in order to make them a direct stakeholder. The other sector that I think carries great potential for us in the theme of growing urban needs is, of course, the food sector. And here again, enormous potential for us. With greater urbanization, I don't necessarily believe that there will be an impact on agricultural efficiency or productivity, but I do think there will be an impact on level of consumption as income increases through urbanization and industrialization. And there again, the opportunity for Thailand to be the main food supplier to the likes of South Korea, China, India is obvious and almost unique. Now, in order to increase the efficiency of both these sectors and other sectors, there are some significant investments that Thailand needs to make over the next 5 to 10 years. Some of them are obvious and much talked about. Education falls into that category, but also other physical infrastructure that will enhance the level of efficiency in order for us to be competitive and realize our full potential, as I outlined just now. That includes obviously investment in logistics and transportation, investment in access to water and irrigation, and of course, from my perspective, investment in access to financial capital as well. Now, with regards to irrigation, we are spending an enormous amount of money in our annual budget. Also, probably the single largest component of our extra budget stimulus plan that we are still in the process of implementing is in the provision of better irrigation to our farmers. In our infrastructure also, we are going to need to make significant change in the way we approach this. 2 weeks ago, the Deputy Prime Minister traveled to China with really two mandates that he had set himself. One was to talk to China about co-investing in the development of our rail system. The other was to talk to China with regards to going into a partnership with us in relation to the food sector. On the first, he came back with some pretty significant agreements in principle, and that is for the government of Thailand and the government of China to effectively go into a joint venture to construct two completely new lines based on the standard gauge. One from the Laotian border, Nong Khai, all the way down to Sungai Golok in order to link up with Malaysia. The other will be a high-speed passenger train linking Bangkok to the eastern seaboard, finishing up in Rayong. 240 kilometers, the train will be designed to be able to take you from here to Rayong in 1 hour. The way we are structuring that is that the Thai side will use property rights as equity, and the Chinese government side will provide the financial capital and the technology in order to ensure that these lines are built in reasonable time.